There's a good chance that many of you will recognize this aircraft. It's the F-35. It's a highly capable, stealthy attack aircraft, and many Western militaries have high hopes for it, with orders in the thousands. However, the expected total cost of the program to the US taxpayer is around $1.6 trillion. That's trillion with a T. And to many people, this understandably seems absolutely obscene. $1.6 trillion, laid end to end, would reach from Earth to the Sun and 70% of the way back again. It's an insane figure. But the F-35, also known as the Joint Strike Fighter, could be seen as relatively good value. And that's because the F-35 is not just one aircraft, it's 4. Well, 3.5. And this isn't even me exaggerating for clicks, well, maybe a bit. But the entire idea of the Joint Strike Fighter, or JSF program that started in 1995, was to design one airframe that could perform 3 roles with only minor differences, keeping parts commonality above 70% and thus saving billions of dollars. This is difficult, but not impossible. The newest F-15EX, known as the Eagle II, has over 70% parts commonality with the regular F-15 Eagles from the 1970s. The FA-18 Super Hornet is 20% larger, 7 tons heavier, and has 40% more range than the legacy Hornet it replaced, and still managed to share around 30% of its components with the regular Hornet. However, by the time the F-35 entered service in the mid-2010s, the aircraft on the left, the F-35A, only shared around 20% of its components with the aircraft on the right, which is an F-35B. The aim of this video is to prove to you just how different the F-35 aircraft are, why they are so different, and how this affects their capabilities. Let's get into it. The JSF program was kicked off in the 1990s and aimed to replace 4 different airframes in service across 3 branches of the US military: the Air Force's F-16s and A-10s, the Navy's F-18s, and the Marine Corps' AV-8B Harriers. And they thought they could do this with, essentially, one airframe. In 2001, Lockheed Martin's X-35 was chosen for the program, comfortably beating out Boeing's X-32, which could be one of the ugliest aircraft to ever fly. And so, we had our base design. But to match the capabilities of the 4 aircraft it was meant to replace, the F-35 would have to be able to do a lot. The Air Force wanted a relatively cheap air supremacy and strike aircraft that they could produce in huge numbers. The Navy wanted a rugged, reliable, all-rounder that could operate from an aircraft carrier, and the Marine Corps wanted it to be able to take off vertically to operate from their amphibious assault ships. Oh, and of course all 3 branches wanted it to be as stealthy as possible. So you can see where all this money went, and to be honest, it worked. With huge international support and the development cost shared among thousands of airframes, the unit cost for the F-35 is only around $90 million. It's a lot of money, but for a 5th generation stealth fighter and one of the most capable airframes in history, it's not too bad. But anyway, different aircraft. We start with the Air Force's F-35, the F-35A. This is sometimes known as the CTOL F-35, standing for Conventional Takeoff and Landing. It's the smallest, lightest, and fastest F-35, and is sort of the base model. It's essentially a more capable, stealthier F-16, with better performance against ground targets, and is second only to the F-22 in terms of air supremacy. The F-35A will be by far the most common variant, and is the one that the majority of export customers have bought. After all, unless you have an aircraft carrier or any pressing reason for the aircraft to take off vertically, it just makes the most sense. It's currently in service with the US Air Force, Italy, Japan, Australia, Denmark, the Netherlands, Norway, and South Korea, with another 6 countries awaiting delivery. The F-35A is the F-35. Israel also operate the F-35A, sort of. It's actually another separate variant known as the F-35I, known in Israel as the Adir, which is Hebrew for awesome or mighty one. The F-35I is essentially an F-35A with Israeli modifications, which Israel have fought hard for over many years. They use their own electronic warfare systems, sensors and countermeasures, and reserved the right to equip the F-35 with Israeli-made missiles, guided bombs, and jamming pods. The IDF are planning to fit the idea with conformal fuel tanks like they use on their F-15s and F-16s, and are even looking into producing a two-seat version of the aircraft. It's important to note that Israel are the only partner nation that are given this sort of freedom, and all other operators have to get explicit approval from the US before making any modifications at all. So that's the F-35A. Conventional takeoff and landing, lightweight, mass production, huge amounts of exports. The F-35C is wildly different. The C model aircraft are made for carriers. There is a reason that we very rarely see carrier aircraft operated from land or vice versa, and that is because to land and take off on an aircraft carrier is a relatively specialised thing. The F-35A would not be able to fly slow enough to actually land on an aircraft carrier. It would most likely stall as it attempted it, as the speed of the air over the wings no longer provided enough lift to keep the thing airborne. Even if it managed to get down onto the carrier, the A model's landing gear is not rated for that kind of landing, and would likely give out completely. And so came the C model. The F-35C is designed for CATO bar operations, catapult assisted takeoff but arrested recovery. Essentially, it was designed to operate off the Navy's massive Nimitz or Gerald R. Ford class carriers. To allow this, the C model has a much larger wing, providing more lift and allowing the F-35C to stay controllable at the low speeds required. The wing area was increased by around 45%, leading to an increased wingspan of 13.1 metres compared to the A model's 10.7 metres. This isn't ideal for an aircraft carrier, which has limited storage space, so the F-35C also has folding wingtips. The C model is the largest and the heaviest, but also has the greatest range, as the large wings allow for more fuel to be carried, about 600 kilograms more than the F-35A. Another notable difference is the landing gear, which has been massively reinforced. This is most notable in the front, with a larger two-wheel design replacing the dainty single wheel of the A and B models. All these modifications do make the C model slower than the A, and it is limited to just 7.5 G manoeuvres, while the Air Force version can withstand turns exceeding 9 Gs. These are very similar trade-offs to the airframes the F-35 was designed to replace. The Navy's F-18 is slower than the Air Force's F-16 and can handle less Gs, but is larger with better range, and is, of course, carrier capable. The F-35A, F-35I, and F-35C are incredibly impressive, but not quite as impressive as the Marine Corps' version, the F-35B. This is a 5th generation stealth fighter aircraft capable of VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing. The B model aircraft are outwardly quite similar to the A models, with the same rough size and shape, but behind the cockpit you will see a large hatch. Below this hatch is a massive lift fan. When taking off vertically, the F-35B opens this hatch and rotates the rear engine nozzle downward, providing two massive sources of vertical thrust to propel it into the air. To keep the F-35B stable during this process, small roll control ducts are present in both wings. When the aircraft is high enough, the rear engine pivots back to horizontal, the roll control ducts are covered, and the lift fan is tucked away, allowing the aircraft to operate like a regular, fixed-wing design. This means it can operate from, well, anywhere. A woodland clearing, a parking lot, or importantly, the deck of a smaller aircraft carrier or amphibious assault ship, like those used by the US Marine Corps, the United Kingdom, Italy, and Japan. The F-35B gives these navies the capability to operate a cutting-edge stealth fighter without having to invest trillions into a massive, catapult-capable aircraft carrier. However, there are some serious trade-offs. The F-35B is a lot heavier than the F-35A, while carrying the least fuel, having the shortest range, the smallest weapons payload, and the lowest G limit at just 7 Gs. This is because, while obviously the lift fan allows the F-35B to actually take off, once it has got airborne and transitioned into normal flight, the fan is just dead weight and has to be lugged around until it's time to land again. It takes up fuel space, makes the B models a bit fatter and less streamlined, and adds weight. But a worthwhile trade-off, just like that of the Harrier jump jets that preceded it. The UK operates the F-35B from their Queen Elizabeth class carriers, and often refers to them as the Joint Combat Aircraft, which is their official designation for the program. The JCA program was paired with the Future Carrier Initiative, and both the F-35 and the QE-class carriers were developed to work seamlessly with one another. The Brits actually operate the B model in a short takeoff vertical landing configuration, using a half conventional, half vertical takeoff with a ski jump to save fuel. They did accidentally launch one directly into the sea a year or so ago, but we are assured it will not happen again. I hope now you understand how wildly different the F-35s are, and how, in my opinion, they are completely different aircraft. 20% parts shared between them certainly support that point anyway. I'm aware this is not an in-depth video, and I have not got into the finer details on the JSF or even the real differences between them, but I hope you learned something regardless. If you do want more detail, Real Engineering has done 2 excellent videos that I cannot recommend enough. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. Please do subscribe for more content, and as always, thank you so much to my Patreon supporters, and thanks to everyone for watching. I'll see you in the next one.